June 6th, 2022. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cerrone,
Here.
Ms. Doyle,
Here.
Mr. Gatewood,
Present.
Ms. Johnson,
Present.
Ms. Simulton,
Present.
Ms. Swanson.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And so now we will have a recognition of our student ambassadors for their time of service. If you guys would join Mr. Gatewood up front here, please.
So the student ambassador role is not about.
Okay, let's see if we can get a microphone. You want to get the microphone?
What about that one? You know.
Testing. There we go. The student ambassador's role is not about self-promotion or serving yourself, but it's about serving your peers by giving them voice and providing the board a student's perspective that helps us govern. This is what servant leadership is all about. Robert Greenleaf, the founder of the modern servant leadership movement, once said, "The first and most important choice a leader makes is the choice to serve, without which one's capacity to lead is severely limited." Servant leaders value others by not just listening, but empathizing in a way that they feel heard. Your willingness to listen and to be the voice and to drive compassion to actually get things done and be the catalyst to make a difference was absolutely amazing. So Colton and Anya, thank you. Thank you for your communication. Being a representative of student voice, not for just sharing, but doing so in a way that brought value to the conversation. Thank you for your commitment. On top of all of your schoolwork, your extracurriculars, and preparing for college, Colton, and Anya as well, you put in hours for meetings, for research, and for preparation. Lastly, thank you for your courage. It is not easy to speak truth to power, but you did so with grace, with integrity, and with intellect. So thank you for setting the standard and blazing a path for all of the future SD308 student ambassadors and the Superintendent Advisory Council. And on behalf of the entire board, Dr. Sparlin and Dr. Waller, we want you to know that we know that this is just the beginning of what you will do in servant leadership positions. Congratulations and thank you. So it's just a small token of our appreciation. This is for Anya Roy. Thank you so very much. And Colton? The same. Thank you so very much. And we have another card from the board to say congratulations on your graduation. So thank you so very much. And I ask the board to come
if the
around.
board would come up, we'll take some pictures. Public comment. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank the public for attending tonight's meeting. We value the feedback we receive from our residents and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Residents interested in speaking to the board this evening are asked to have completed a comment card and presented it to the secretary to the board. When the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name for the public record, and provide your feedback. Please note that comments are limited to 5 minutes per person and that no discussion of personnel matters or responses to questions are permitted. The board does not participate in discussions during public comment. Follow-up to your questions or concerns will be addressed by administration through the contact information provided on the comment card. Thank you.
John Kellogg.
John Kellogg. Ni hao. Hello. My name is John Kellogg, and I will be entering my sophomore year at Oswego High School. Tonight, I would like to tell you about the benefits of our district's Chinese program. When selecting classes for my freshman year, I was excited to join Oswego's Chinese Foreign Language program. I was drawn to the Chinese program because I've always been fascinated by non-Latin script languages. As a young child, I learned how to read and write Egyptian hieroglyphics, and so the transition to Chinese was an obvious choice for me, as it is an important language in today's world. I also decided to take Chinese because it would allow me to interact and communicate with the 1.1 billion people in the world who speak Mandarin, the main Chinese dialect. Chinese has taught me to be a better student because it forces me to study for a long period of time every night, something I had not done before. During this time of studying, I must learn and practice 3 things at once. I must first learn the English meaning of a certain character. Then I need to memorize the pinyin, which is the Latin script and pronunciation of the character. Finally, I have to memorize how to write the character using the correct strokes. Even though I have only spent 1 year in the course, I know I want to keep practicing and studying Chinese in the coming years. I will miss my teacher, Liu Laoshi, as she retired at the end of the school year, but I'm looking forward to learning who our new teacher will be. I want to thank you for the ongoing support of the Chinese program in our district. It means a lot to me and my fellow classmates, and I hope it remains a foreign language option for students in the future years. Thank you very much. Good night. 谢谢，晚安。
That's all for today.
Thank you. Now, 6.1, board member comments. Does anyone have any board member comments tonight?
I just wanted to share that we had the opportunity once again to hand out diplomas to our recent graduates, and it was an honor and a privilege to once again stand before them and honor them. I continue to be amazed at what happens in this district, and being able to watch Colton graduate this couple weekends ago was quite an honor, so thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, all of the challenges that we have as board members, and this is what we signed up for, and so I don't regret that at all. But it's so rewarding when you get to see the results and the fruits of all that we've done and the efforts that we put in. To see them walk across the stage, it's emotional and it's exciting, and you just anticipate the great things that they're going to do, and you know that we're in great hands, because if anyone attended graduation and you heard the speeches and the music, and I mean, so
amazing, right? In everything they do, and they do it with such excellence. So I so enjoyed it, having the opportunity to present the class and their abilities to, be ready to be recognized for what they've done, and to be recognized by the state of Illinois and our board to honor them for their achievements. It was such an honor for me. So thank you all.
I just wanted to say ditto, but just to add one more, having the opportunity to participate because Dr. Sparling, Mr. Grays, and the administration over at Oswego High School, we have students who participate in athletics, and they were competing on the day of graduation. So to give them the opportunity to actually have a small graduation ceremony where their parents and their families could, see them walk across the stage and be presented with their diplomas, I think it's a priceless service to provide. So kudos to Dr. Sparling, Mr. Grays, and the athletic director and the staff for having that opportunity for the families and the students. And I was just honored to be a part of that. So again, ditto.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Board committee reports. We'll start with finance and facilities.
We began a pretty broad overview of some of the concepts surrounding finance in our district, and it kind of went off on a few different directions, basically, where we were talking about the tax levy and our historic situation where we had chosen not to capture the increase in CPI. We had talked through some of the opportunities that we have for our forecasting of our budgets. And in general, Dr. Petsky kind of went through and just gave some more, like, not maybe 101 school finance, but maybe 102 school finance to some of our finance committee members, so that we can kind of be prepared to start talking about the budget next. Pretty good conversation. It was more theoretical than we usually get. It was kind of an interesting change.
Okay. And now our policy and legislative committee. Go ahead.
I thought our final meeting of the year was going to be light and easy, and we were just going to walk right on out of there, but Val kept us right on target, and we went through a lot of policies that day. The few that I'd like to point out that I thought were had incredible discussion around them were policy 4:180, pandemic preparedness, management, and recovery. We had a really robust conversation around that policy, and what was lacking was bringing evidence of reflection to the forefront and requesting that now that we've been through a pandemic, not to say that it's over, but now that we've been through a pandemic, what have we learned, and how are we going to reflect, and what would we do differently moving forward? And requesting that administration ensure that the learning that we have gone through and we've experienced be utilized should we find ourselves in any other sort of pandemic preparedness. I'm still praying that monkeypox does not find its way into a pandemic. The other policy that we talked heavily about was transparency, fiscal and business management, 4:10, and trying to make sure that as budgets get approved and information gets approved, that we have a direct line to the community and to our parents, and showing them what the budget is and making sure those are on the website in a timely manner, so that, and in Vision 308, and making sure that that stuff is done in a timely manner. And then the third one was policy 6:290, and that one's on instruction and homework. And we talked about the lack of consistency across buildings, across grade levels, and then the transitions from elementary to junior high and junior high to high school. and where some principals may not feel that homework is important, but others do, it really puts our students at a disadvantage because of managing expectations. And so we did ask that that policy go back to teaching and learning and to the administration to look at it so there is some consistency for our students.
But we also, when you guys take that one back, there was a couple of us who recognized the importance of being able to not give homework if you don't believe in it. Like, there has to be some kind of autonomy within the teaching profession. Like, if I have 10 minutes at the end of class and my kids can finish it with me, as compared to being forced to give someone an hour's worth of homework.
Not to give busy work.
Yeah, we were kind of on both sides of the fence.
If I may, I look forward to having that discussion and teaching and learning for sure. That's, yeah, make sure that we do that. Homework's a big deal to me.
I think it's really important for our students, especially when they're transitioning from, say, elementary to junior high, if they've never had homework for all of elementary, and then all of a sudden they're in junior high and they have a couple hours worth of homework at night. That's a tough transition for students and families. So just making sure there's some consistency, but also to Allie's point, making sure we're not giving busy work to create homework because it's a district expectation. So there was a lot of just robust conversation about it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to send it back. Val suggested we send it back to teaching and learning, and I think that was just a really great way to bring full circle everyone into the discussion.
And
You know,
just,
we don't have on that committee kids.
well, I was just gonna say.
Yeah, what do you
Well,
guys
and that
think?
was
I was-
their,
it was
in
one
the
of-
student surveys,
Yeah, it
that's
was
been
a
their
part,
number
it was
one
a
concern.
very highly
Yeah.
polled question on the student survey. So I would recommend that feedback be added to whatever
Okay.
research is being done.
And
Okay.
routinely is so. That's not new from this survey. I was thinking actually about student surveys that we've sent out for years. It always comes back that homework for the sake of homework has been the concern. But the piece in there that we kind of jumped right into homework instead of, that I'm curious to see what happens, is that concept of the consistency, especially between our buildings. This has come up several times, that there is inconsistency in our practices between buildings in terms of grading and homework, and quantity and quality to achieve different things, and we want to make sure that we include opportunities there, not just in the homework category itself.
Yeah, I can see a lot of branches to this.
All right, hit it
You
before
know-
we move on.
Oh, well.
3 days without any homework in any classes, and then all of a sudden you get 8 hours in one day, things like that, because just a lot of
Anya's
things
been there
happen
more
to students.
recently, Mr. Cerrone, but I'm sure you had homework too.
Oh, yeah.
But I think on the topic of inconsistency, it's not like limited to, inconsistency between buildings. There's inconsistency between classes. And of course, teachers teach differently. That's what makes it such, I guess, like a variable profession to go into. And you have to be very careful in deciding, what are you going to teach? How are you going to teach it? But it's to the extent, and Colton, if you have something to say on this too, but I've seen that like the level of student success or student understanding is so different among, like, for me, like the same honors pre-calculus class, like some kids are learning completely different things or understanding something in a completely different way, or they'll have a completely different grade and will be in the same unit. And it's just, that's also not limited to just homework, whereas I might have homework of 5 problems, someone else might have homework that consists of 20 problems. Maybe 20 problems would be more helpful, but again, maybe it's just busy work. So having that like teacher communication between not only like the same buildings or different buildings, but the same classes as well, that's just so important. And I think that's been something that students have been concerned for a long time, not just the amount of homework, but consistency of homework and classwork and even test administration among students, which is also not the same.
Yeah, my mind kind of went the same way with that. It's like, it's easy to see the inconsistency amongst, however many elementary schools we have going into middle school, and then middle schools into one high school or 2 high schools. But when it comes down to classes, individual subjects. AP classes, if it's, an AP government class or anything, there's inconsistency amongst if it's two teachers teaching the same subject, same class, but it's a matter of, I don't know if it's miscommunication or just lack of but still.
And just because this is a fun conversation, I won't get too far, but I'm enjoying what you have to say. So how, in your minds then, just to branch off of that, it is sometimes inconsistent between teachers because perhaps there's different learning styles in the classroom that they're trying to accommodate. So how do we keep it, what would you suggest, having been there recently, on how to differentiate the education for what people need and still provide a similar experience?
I think to some extent there are things that have to be they have to be unified, and there are other things that don't. That's the obvious answer, but to kind of elaborate on that, things like homework. Having some degree of freedom in your homework for students. Say, these problems are mandatory because, one, they'll be on your test and they reflect what we learned. These problems are for if you need to practice this or if you need to practice this. Having some freedom for students with that, that's extremely helpful. And finding a system that unifies that with all teachers in a certain subject somehow, that would be so helpful. Because, of course, things are going to be taught differently or understood differently. But in the end, homework that prepares you for your test, that shouldn't be that different. The only variable differences should be if the student themselves need to expand on a certain topic. But that's like my view on it.
That's a good way to put it.
Yep.
And I get that. The only thing that I see, I don't know how to put this, but with any kind of like AP or college board course, there's already required curriculum that a teacher needs to go over, a teacher needs to cover, where so, other classes, they have more so that freedom to kind of accommodate to different learning styles, whatever the case may be in each classroom. But with AP and honors courses, it's kind of, it's
an external test.
Right. They have to make sure that these students are prepared for someone else coming in and evaluating them, not the same teacher that's been with them for the entire school year.
That's a good point. That's true. Thank you for that.
Very good. All right, 6.2, Superintendent's Report.
Well, good evening, Board. Tonight, I start my comments on a very sad note. This past weekend, Joshua Mears, a student who was to be a senior at OHS this upcoming school year, passed away. We are all deeply saddened by Joshua's death, and our hearts and support go out to his family and friends as they grieve his loss. He will be greatly missed by his friends, teachers, staff at OHS, and throughout our community. I would ask that you join me in a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you. Please keep Josh's family and friends in your thoughts during this incredibly difficult time. As we all know, on May 24th, 2022, there was another mass shooting in the United States at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde County, Texas. People from all around the world mourn the deaths of students and staff from this horrific event. When things like this happen, it causes us to pause, it causes us to think, and it causes us to reflect on our own practices and procedures. So tonight, I'm going to highlight some of the things that we do on a regular basis to help ensure the safest environment that we can for our students and staff. We partner closely with our police and fire districts with regular communication that includes ongoing safety meetings and trainings between their leadership and ours. ALICE, which is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate, Training Institute has been hosted by the district since 2015 to certify instructors in every building. The administration who are certified as instructors then work with our SROs to plan and conduct building-based training with staff, followed by training with students and staff together in drills and exercises throughout the year. This summer, we have two-day trainings scheduled this summer. We host annual crisis safety meetings, which include all first responder agency partners and administration. We work very closely with Plainfield, Kendall County, Oswego, Montgomery, and Aurora to review and update emergency response plans, share ideas, and provide training through joint tabletop exercises. We just had one such training on June 1st. And school emergency plans incorporate first responder feedback and contain key responses for varied and potentially dangerous situations, which are specific to each building, and each building administrator participates in those trainings each year at the beginning of the year. Our schools are secured, and we have secured entrances and a monitored single point of entry. Schools also have the ability to lock all doors, all exterior doors immediately, and alerts are sent to the district staff as well as first responders in event of any threat or a violent situation were to occur to reduce response time. We have 2 full-time school resource officers with the Oswego Police who are assigned to our high schools, who also work with our feeder schools and our junior highs and our elementary schools to assist with training and safety drills. And the district's added a new position for the 22-23 school year, a school safety security coordinator. This position includes the requirement of successful first responder background to ensure effective coordination of safety and security training for a broader range of staff, assisting with best practice safety drills in collaboration with our SROs, safety planning for large indoor and outdoor school events, and daily egress and ingress assessments to improve safety-related arrival dismissal and traffic flow. It's important to note that safety is the utmost importance here in School District 308, and that's why we are also hiring the additional position of the safety coordinator within our school district. Once that happens, one of the first jobs will be to audit the facilities and our current procedures as we work over the summer getting ready for the 22-23 school year. It's unfortunate that we have to do these things in schools, but as unfortunate as it may be, it is necessary so that when situations do occur, we are prepared, as best prepared as we can be. On a separate note, I would like to remind our high school students that the deadline to apply as a student ambassador for the 22-23 school year has been extended to June 29th. So for any students who are interested in applying, more information can be found on the district website, or they may contact my office for additional information as well. That is my report for this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
6.3, Student Ambassador Reports.
Thank you. I guess I want to start by saying we send our condolences to Josh's family and to the families of those who had to mourn during the Texas school shooting. And sending condolences more than once this year, just once at all, it felt impossible. It felt like it was more than enough, but having to do it several times is a lot. And I guess hearing from you, Dr. Sparlin, that there's a way that our students can feel safer in this learning environment, it's really important. And I guess I wanted to thank you for that. On the topic of promoting a safer school environment, just building off of our last Student Advisory Committee meeting, we conducted research using the different model policies that we talked about at our last meeting in order to best address sexual harassment in our school district, to provide a student-friendly way to talk about the sexual harassment policies that we've administered here. As we recognize that some of the language that's been utilized in the text discussing these policies is not extremely easy to understand, we use different models like Title IX, Aaron's Law. We even use different district policies to get a better understanding of how we can implement that into our schools and how we can show our students that this district does prioritize the safety of its students regarding sexual harassment as an issue as a whole. Dr. Waller is also going to be conducting a presentation later tonight on the sexual harassment action plan that we've been working towards this entire year, and we hope that it embodies SD308's prioritization of student safety.
And I just want to take my time to first say to Dr. Sparlin and the Board of Education, thank you for this opportunity. It was amazing. I was honored to be selected for it. It's so great that, you know, there's districts like us and across Illinois, across the country that, you know, start these roles for student voice to be heard at a district level. And I know for years to come, this will be an example to any other school that, you know, wants to, or school district that wants to implement this. I can't thank you all enough. You were also welcoming to me and Anya, and you know, as this was the first time, and you know, we got started and everything. It was a little maybe overwhelming at times, but it was definitely a great opportunity, and we had a great time. And it's bittersweet to leave, but I know that it's being left in great hands, and I know that this committee and these roles will grow with time, and I just can't wait to see the impact they have on future classes. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Colton, Anya, it's been an honor to work with you as well, so thank you. All right, item 7.1 is an equity presentation. Dr. Waller and Mrs. Dahlquist are here to present to the board.
As Dr. Waller makes her way in and gets set up there, I just wanted to say, while it is the two of us doing the presenting, and mostly Dr. Waller, it does take a whole team of people to address equity, diversity, and inclusion. So while we're the only two people speaking, it is a regular topic across ESD and at all of our admin meetings, and it's truly a team effort to improve. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, we have our equity statements, and really there are so many things in Envision 308 that address equity. We talk frequently that really everything we do is around creating equity. If you go to the next slide, this is one of the highlights from Envision 308, where we talk about having choice, challenge, and success for all of our students. And some of the highlight of the work in there, the fourth area of our Climate for Learning framework is around having responsive and engaging instruction. And we've spent many hours in training and walking classrooms to see just that. Some of the examples here are the training that was had for our junior high, all staff, and then all of our administrators around engaging instruction. Some of the highlights also that we've done with the literacy framework and the math framework is having some choice in instructional materials. We utilized a lot of our ESSER funds to expand our libraries, both in the classroom and at the school level, to include works from authors and as well as protagonists from diverse backgrounds. And then we've really worked on having our student voice be part of that, where we had our high school students surveyed on how we were doing on meeting their needs. So we have a baseline so that we know if our work in the future is increasing that or not. And then finally, just the new adoption curriculum process. It had been quite a while since we'd had one of those here in 308. And we worked together to create that, and one of the lenses that all of our curriculum committee councils and advisory committees need to do is go through and look at an equity lens. And you probably remember, as we talked about our elementary social studies curriculum and making sure that choice and equity were part of that. Even our junior high math selections, as we brought those materials forward, really highlighted on what that would look like and how do we bring that choice, challenge, and success there. And then finally, looking forward to our high school social studies work. Dr. Waller has done quite a bit of professional development with them, and you'll certainly see a lens of equity when we bring those materials to you. Dr. Waller.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Dahlquist. I'm very excited to be here this evening. This is it's been quite the school year, and a very fun, overwhelming, challenging, and exciting journey. And so as we shift into the support for student learning, you know, we started off with the equity statements being approved and really sitting down and having conversations about what those statements actually mean in action. And so I was able to have the opportunity to provide and support PD with administrators and their staff on what those equity statements look like, what they look like in a scenario, how do we respond. And so in doing the journey and tour throughout the district, that was the one piece that we felt we really wanted to start with, our ability to actually recognize inequities so that we can then respond to them. And so we started that journey using the equity statements. Furthermore, I've had the honor and the privilege of working with both Anya and Colton and Monica and Zoe and Ariana on this process, and their brilliance and their brains, I always talk about it, have been, it fills my cup. And so we definitely bonded through that process, and just truly understanding their ability to even break down, like, listen, we really still care strongly about mental health. And so we are going to go this direction of sexual harassment, but what does it look like with mental health? What does it look like for students to have educational awareness? What does it look like for students to have safety? Okay, that is interesting. Okay. Furthermore, not only did I have the honor of working with these brilliant minds, but I've also been able to create the coalition of students, both from OH and OE, and even within that coalition, it was important that I was able to find students from various backgrounds, and so even within that group, we had students with IEPs, we had students who were not always as stellar, we had students who were passionate, we had students who just really brought out all of these amazing human loving moments, and so being able to work with that coalition of students, we came together several times. They were able to also receive PD and what it looks like for them to be co-conspirators in today's space as equity champions, how they can utilize their voice, how they can stand up for others, and most importantly, love themselves and who they are, and amplifying their voices. And so, as you know, we had the Amplify event April 7th, and then we met again in May, and they have created these ideas of this visual presentation that they would love to see in both of their schools, as they do also recognize from that original survey that was created that students wanted to see more representation of BIPOC and LGBTQ culture within their schools. So they worked to address what they felt that would look like visually within the schools. And we also have planned our first Amplify event for the fall, which will be November 3rd. And we want to amplify mental health. So very excited about that and the journey with those students. In addition to that, I've shared we've done a gazillion PDs, at least 60. And Allie Anderson, she couldn't be here tonight, but she has been amazing in partnering with me and pulling work that had been done previously so that we can make sure that we're building on the work that was already done, and then continue to expand on that. So working with Allie, working with Andrew, there were a lot of different people who were like, we're down, let's do it. And so their insight and perspective and educational background, and I have one as well, but even that elementary pool or those strategies or pulling in the literacy framework, and Allie always made the teachers stand up and walk around in circles, you know, and I'm like, I'm high school, you can sit down. So, you know, those were really, really fun and meaningful and impactful and challenging, but ultimately we found that we walked away from those experiences making sure that equity was equivalent to love, because that is what we truly believe. And so furthermore, we were able to add microaggressions to the bullying policy, which is extremely important because in a lot of the presentations that I do, I discuss microaggressions and its impact on trauma responses and triggers. And so it's important that that language is there so that we can begin to address some of the racial trauma, identity trauma, religious trauma that does actually exist within our communities. So here is a list of some professional development topics that we have done throughout this year. As you can see, there's a long list there. And there are also some linked pieces just in case anyone wanted to go back and receive more information. But we started with those narratives and perspectives, personal identity. That is a phenomenal space to begin because that is the place that highlights our similarities as well as our differences. And then shifting into that cultural proficiency continuum and the equity literacy continuum. And the equity literacy continuum was the recognize, respond, redress, that continuum. And so that's where we started this school year. In addition to some of the things listed here, I tried to break things down within 3 different dimensions. One being that personal dimension, so that's a lot of time spent this school year where we looked into ourselves and we reflected. And then luckily for some of the different schools like Boulder Hill and Southbury, we were able to then kind of transition over into more of an instructional dimension, which allows us to address, you know, that cultural responsiveness and those pieces that are happening in the classroom. And so as you can see on the left side, these are the individuals who in departments that received professional development. As you can see, we made it to most schools and we made it to several schools more than once. And so we're excited about the consistency and the systems that we're going to create for next school year to make sure that we are all moving forward. So As we shift into the recruit and retaining piece, this school year, I was able to work with the recruitment specialist as well as the executive director of HR and the assistant director, and we really wanted to begin looking at and having personal conversations about what it actually means to retain people of color. What is that safe space, et cetera. And it's been an honor to be able to have those type of conversations with Dr. Sparlin and Mrs. Dahlquist, in being able to say, hey, here's an idea, or what do you think about just reaching out to so-and-so? And understanding that sometimes that retention is very simple, it's just personable. And so we've started on that way. We've worked with the RRC, and Faith has done a phenomenal, Mrs. Dahlquist has done a phenomenal job with leading those action steps and where we want to go to make sure that we have consistency within the interview questions, but also providing some autonomy. So in able to do that, creating different categories so that people can pull what they need, but so that we make sure that we're getting the equivalent of candidates from one school to the next. And so in addition to that, we created a culturally responsive flyer that has the coalition students on front that we've shared at job fairs, as well as different spaces for our potential candidates, so that they recognize that we are a culturally responsive and excited district to have all these different perspectives and backgrounds. And so that is the work thus far with Recruit and Retain. So I wanted to share a few pictures from Amplify because they're so adorable. And they are powerful and insightful and courageous and braver than so many adults that I know. And so I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted them because they spent a lot of time creating the questions. They spent time reflecting on what they wanted to share. They shared personal experiences that had to do with their religion, with being bilingual, with racial background, with identity. And the part that I love the most about Amplify is that as I start off all of my PDs, I tell people that equity is not race. Equity is not just about race. It's not just about culture. It's really about all of these different facets of who we are. And so these students were able to say, okay, we understand the assignment and we're going to do it. And they did. And so I want to thank everyone who was able to be there. And I'm excited about what they'll do in the future. But these are my babies, and I love them. Alrighty, so I have shared with you about the coalition and the work that's to be done with them. We did have 5 seniors graduate, and so we have already had some recommendations at the junior high level for students who are going to be coming up into the high school, as well as some students who are just like, oh, hey, what is that? We would like to be involved. And so I'm like, okay, well, we'll get you through a process. So that is really exciting as well, because again, it's important to me that those students who don't necessarily feel that they have a space in here, or if they see something that they love and they're like, I'm passionate, we want to make sure that we honor that. And so skipping down to the Student Ambassador Committee, we've shared a lot about the work that they have done. We have an action plan in place. I have worked with the assistant principals of student services at both high schools on the steps that they like to take. The student ambassadors and the advisory committee overall have provided a lot of feedback on what they feel would be most beneficial. And so we are prioritizing making sure that our structures are very clear, that students have access. We are developing a brochure, QR code. We're being transparent about mutual grounds and the topics, definitions. We have, I created my first QR code, I know, and it has like live information about, sexual harassment. The kids said, oh, this is really good information. And so we want to be able to create this space to put those, in the washroom or, in the student services space, wherever we can, in the Google Classrooms of social workers. So we've also communicated with them. In addition, we've had teachers already begin signing up to be a part of the Safe Space Committee, where they will have these decals that will be in their windows so students know, that they can go to them to get more resources, to get direction. It's not necessarily a space for them to begin to divulge information, but ultimately just knowing, oh, you're safe and you're gonna get me where I need to go. And so initially we were saying, oh, 10 per school. And so thus far there's been more than 10 per school with teachers who are like, I'm down. So that's really exciting. So there's just been this nuance of work. And I will say that the assistant principals at the high schools are also very excited about pushing this work forward. And lastly, we have the survey for the high schools that Mrs. Dahlquist spoke to, where we administered that to get this sense of belonging and have an understanding of where students are with SEL as well as with cultural responsiveness. And so there were some plans in place for that, and I plan to work with the new director of SEL on how we will implement the work with that and supporting students. And so this is my little 2-minute clip from Amplify.
All right, so the picture behind us right now is actually a drawing of Reducem, who was a part of a group of abolitionists who decided they were going to take down the Confederate flag after Dylan Lewis killed the individuals at the church in North Carolina. And so my next question for you all is, ally versus co-conspirator. How can we as a people strive to be co-conspirators for each other, for our classmates, and for our community? Joseph?
For me at first, I did not know what the term co-conspirator was. I feel like the majority of people here do not know what it means. For me, when I view ally versus co-conspirator, ally has the positives of supporting the marginalized group, while a co-conspirator has the positives, but also the consequences that come along with it. This is the story that Ms. Waller shared. One way to kind of show ally versus conspirator is an ally would root from the side, like, oh, come on, girl, come on, Dallas, this is going to take the pole. But a co-conspirator would go up to that pole and put their hand on the pole because they know that the police most likely will not use the pole if they're standing there. So it's kind of taking that next step to stand with them and not by them. So that's not but actually by their shoes that they're walking by.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I also think for us to become co-conspirators is to let go of any fears that we have of performing those actions with others. So this can be fears we have that people will notice for what we say and do. And we also need to be able to take action in the spur of the moment and instead of waiting for other people to do it for us. So we need to find the ability to speak out and make changes in our community. And it's important for us to understand the difference between being an ally and a co-conspirator. Karina? I think the difference between an ally and a co-conspirator, like Joseph was saying, is that an ally is someone who says they support you and they can repost things on social media, but a co-conspirator is someone who's right next to you, backing down to lift you, and there's someone who lifts up in your shoes, and even though they may not 100% understand what you're going through, they're going to be right there no matter what.
Thank you. All right.
Nice.
So I just wanted to share just a little clip of that. It is on YouTube. And the wonderful thing about Amplify is that we really try to honor all of the different perspectives. We did a land acknowledgement for Indigenous people. This was during Ramadan, so we made sure that we broke so those who were fasting could eat. We made sure they had water and dates, and that is what this is about. It's just about filling the cups and thinking about those perspectives. And even my niece was able to speak to her perspective of having food allergies, in which she thought, well, what does that have to do with equity? It does. And so her even being able to share that story was pretty powerful. So thank you. All right, so equity indicators of success for June 2023, and I apologize if I'm over time. Super excited to do this at the elementary level. We will have elementary DEI trainings for all. We're looking at doing different clusters. I do kind of break things down into safe space, brave space, and create space, depending on where everyone is in their equity journey, to make sure that people are receiving exactly what they need. In addition to that, we are going to have Dr. Goldie Muhammad, who is a Wabansie Valley grad, She has a phenomenal text called Cultivating Genius, and she looks at these 5 pursuits of learning, and I did add a sample there, but she is going to come, and we've created a cohort of all 13 schools with individuals who will come and who will virtually get together and debrief and break down and be trained, so then they can go back and then train everyone else in this work. So we're really, really excited about what we'll do at that elementary level, especially since they're already transitioning with some of the curriculum. At the junior high level, we are going to be doing obviously some DEI training. We're looking at content though for junior high, especially within ELA and social studies, in order to begin to shift into that instructional dimension. I'm also collaborating with those junior high instructional coaches, and then we will have 4 staff meetings for all based on personal and instructional dimension. In addition, I will also be doing some trainings with elementary and junior high admin. We want to make sure that we continue that work, so I've been working closely with Dr. Allen and Mrs. Luters to join their meetings, continue that equity process. And for the high school, we are going to be really digging into that DEI curriculum work. There's so much happening in those spaces. I also will be doing all staff, but when I'm working with them specifically, I shared a PowerPoint that I did for the Social Studies Committee, where we delve into that personal dimension, got into some brave space, and then we were able to then shift and transition, where I went through and I broke down one of the units that they had and showed them where all of these other equity pieces could exist, as well as the Women's Suffrage March, because there was like a whole decade missing. And I was like, hey, this is what we need. So the part about it is that even in having those conversations with the committee, they are also extremely passionate about talking about those things too. So for them to see it in the PowerPoint, they were like, yes, this is what we want. We just want to make sure that we have the support to be able to do the work. And this summer, I'm keeping busy. I am going to be facilitating 2 DEI trainings for the Sweet 16 group. I harass with love 16 individuals to come and to be a part of this committee. They're from various schools and various spaces, as well as teachers on special assignment. And so I'm going to train them on how to facilitate for equity. We're looking at common language. We're looking at understanding the root of inequity. So really kind of breaking it down so that they have a larger understanding. And then I'll also be doing teacher, staff, DEI summer trainings as well on those following topics. We're making progress.
Making lots of progress. I want to thank Dr. Waller. You have an unusual gift of being able to show a lot of love while pushing change. And to use your phrase that you've taught me, thanks for all the things.
All the things.
Thank you.
Questions?
Not a question, but just, Dr. Waller, thank you for your passion, and I can see how you draw students and staff, and that's awesome. And I think you said equity is equivalent to love. And when I think of love is the act of benefiting another at the expense of self.
Yes.
So it really resonates with me, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
First and foremost, thank you for coming to to SD308 and bringing this type of work to our district and to our students and staff. It's one of the most brave things that I've seen. You have received a lot of hate and non-love, and you continue to always have a smile on your face. And so I just wanted to thank you for that. Amplify was one of the most incredible experiences for me. I didn't know what to expect, so it was a little overwhelming. And what I wish everybody could understand is this type of work is beneficial to everyone. It's not just beneficial to certain sections of students or staff. It's a benefit to everyone. So I hope we can all approach it like that. From a board perspective, I'm interested in how can we, or could we possibly in the future, have some training around policy making and equity and anti-racist policy making. I I don't know what that looks like. I don't know that anyone here does. I'm not speaking for anyone, but I think it's very important for us to understand that. I think we did, there was a lot of movement made when the equity committee brought forth an equity statement, and that took many months, over a year, and a lot of work by a lot of different people. And I think that's very important, but I think at the board level, especially when we're charged with policy making, I think we need some sort of parameters around that. So that would be very helpful, and I hope we can do that in the future.
I would love that. It's my third dimension that I didn't mention, the institutional dimension. So that personal, instructional, and then institutional. I would love to look at policy and figure out, different ways, and even, starting with, even though I know there's different views, but starting with that dress code policy is one start, and adding microaggressions is another piece, and it's definitely, I think, starting from the ground up with those kids and utilizing, leveraging their voices is really going to help us with some of these policy pieces, and I would love to support whenever you all are ready.
That would be excellent.
Well, we have sent several policies to the equity committee.
We were this year, we had the opportunity to bounce things over to the equity committee. It's just, it can be a little clunky too, because we don't really have, I don't want to call it formal training, but just some sort of training. We're all coming at it from our own perspective. And so our starting points are all very different. So I just think a little bit of consistency would be helpful.
From everything that you've brought to the equity committee, and since I've been a part of that, is it's well done. It's already going through committees. It comes to us with lots of different perspectives, student input. So yes, the committees themselves, might have varying and non-expert, opinions or perspectives, but it definitely you're answering all the questions. Why was this put in? Why wasn't it? So it's been a great experience there. When I look at equity, I feel it's necessary. If we really want a great school district, we want all of our students to do the best that they can, achieve the best that they can. We have large achievement gaps, and so we're not there. We need to get this. I've done lots of reading. Everything that I've read, everything that you can do and that you've discussed, just helps bring up those kids. It doesn't draw anything from the other kids. It brings up everybody. So this to me is it's necessary to have a great school district. So hearing, and I haven't been on this board very long, hearing that you've heard hate, it saddens me. If we want a great school district, this is work that needs to get done. So that's a statement, as well as showing appreciation for everything that has been going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
The microaggressions, you said that that's kind of one of the next big hurdles. I love the dress code. Equity is not just race, it's abilities, it's, male, female, it's everything. But yeah, so I'd like to hear more about where you're going with microaggressions.
So from a professional development standpoint, when I am discussing microaggressions, and there's this really awesome mosquito video that I show where it likens microaggressions to mosquito bites and helping people to understand that some receive more than others. And so if you are being bitten all the time, then when something happens, there may be a trauma response. And it happens to adults. And so that's really the biggest part with the professional development, because I'm having conversations about, well, when are you all going to get married? when are you all going to have kids? Because it's important to understand that microaggressions are anything that goes against the dominant norm that's been established, which is the husband and the wife and the 2 kids and the picket fence and the dog. And so anyone that strays from that, they tend to get attacked with those type of comments, and it's not always ill-intended, which is why microaggressions are very difficult, because we've all been programmed in the same space, in the same communities, and we've been raised in the same, society to have those same dominant norm thought processes. And so when I'm able to break it down from that lens, and again, pulling away from anything that has to do with race, right? It kind of evens that playing field with saying, oh, wait, like I have experienced that. Oh, wait, I have felt that. And so as we then begin as adults to truly understand how we are impacted by microaggressions, then it should also then allow us to understand that our babies with these underdeveloped brains, though brilliant, don't always make the right choices when it's a trauma response. And so we still need to consequence if necessary, but we need to restore, and we need to teach, and we need to support, because we can't have students that are sitting in an in-school suspension for having a trauma response, no matter what the topic is about, and they're not, that trauma isn't being addressed, because it's going to continue to just trigger, and they're not going to be restored from that. And so that is kind of where I'm going with, not kind of, that's where I'm going with the microaggression piece. Does that sound good?
I appreciate these.
Sorry. No, sorry.
Awesome.
I won't go into anything long and deep, but that illustration is exactly what I wanted to talk, what I wanted to recognize you for what you bring, is that people are feeling as though they are seen and heard because of the work that you're doing. And you're creating an inclusive environment, which I think as we continue to focus on climate and culture is the foundation for anything else that we're talking about to be able to happen. And so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
When I think about equity and then these words like, hate and all these things that people don't understand, I just wish they would realize that equity is like, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a pie that you cut up and there's only enough opportunity to go around, or there's only enough access to go around, or there's only enough voice to go around. Right. No, it is what is the word? Infant. It is, yeah, there's so much of it, and you don't have to, there's enough for everyone, right? And so when we look at equity, that's what I would hope that people would take away from it, that we're not trying to take things away from some to give to others.
Absolutely. It's about understanding who you are and leveraging the access that you may have in order to provide and support others in having access as well, which is the whole purpose of education. So.
And I think what's very powerful is, again, student-led with Amplify, with Talk, with so much that's happening in our district. Parents, I often see on social media, or guardians or families or community members, well, that doesn't exist or that doesn't exist, yet our students are telling us that they are experiencing racism, they're experiencing sexual harassment, they're experiencing, so it's not really our place to say it's not happening, it's our place to listen, and it's our place to support. And I think as we become more student-led and focused, that we just become a better district in and of itself. So I know that I'm a better board member because of our student ambassadors and the teams and the team that's behind them. So I think if we listen more, we will grow more.
They have a lot to say, all the way down to our calendar and AP tests falling on specific religious holidays, and how that impacts them. So I mean, they are the catalyst for all the things. I've learned a ton from them as well. So thank you.
I would just like to say to you, Faith, that when you always say that equity is everyone's work, and so there's that saying that what gets measured gets done. And so how do we make sure that equity is measured and that it's about in everyone's evaluations include some aspect of equity, because when I was a part of the equity committee, that was the thing they were drilling into us, like who is accountable for this work, and what does it look like, and how does it get into the evaluations of everyone who's supposed to be doing the work, which is everyone.
And really, equity work is almost all of our work. So when we write school improvement plans and we say we want this percentage of students to, meet, it's about looking into data, looking into the different demographic groups, looking at that. But those are sometimes slow-moving outcomes that are not measured in 5 months at a time or 6 months at a time. You have to do that over years. I think one of the most telling pieces is when we do our classroom walkthroughs and we look for, are we having choice? Are we having success? Are we having challenge? Are the materials engaging for all of our students? As we look, on those pieces, we have classrooms that you can tell are further along in creating responsive instruction than others. And this coming year, the principals are going to be giving us what percentage of their classrooms do they think are doing what we are wanting within the literacy framework and the math framework. And then we're doing classroom walkthroughs with that to kind of monitor and support those pieces. Another piece is how well are we doing as that high school student survey on, are we getting that right degree of challenge and success? This year we are at 50% with our efforts and things. Next year when we give that survey, will it go up? I could go on some other pieces on what that looks like, even how we have conversations at budget level discussions. What does that look like, and are we asking about equity, and are we approaching that when we design our courses, when we send out information to parents, all of those pieces we have to ask, is everybody at the same opportunity to be able to access the resources and the curriculum and the communication that we have. And we have so much work to do, but that different groups are asking those questions is a measurement for me of how we're progressing in that journey.
I would like to add, because it's not on here, something that Faith and I have talked about, which I felt was important for me, is the work that we do within ESD. And so creating our equity goal or equity activity that we're going to do once a month, whether it's visual, but anything that's going to start to bring us into those type of conversations more often, since I know that ESD directors are those who evaluate principals, and so they're being equipped to having those conversations as well is going to be important, because as we know, when we're looking at those evaluation pieces and even that the Danielson framework, equity is implied, and there's only one small component that's explicit. And so we've just talked about how we can continue to come together and grow as an equity ESD team, and that I think is also going to help in that piece with what gets measured is what gets done. So
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so are there any questions on the consent agenda, 8.1? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I make a motion to approve all items under consent, including 8.1 minutes from the Board of Education meeting on May 9th, 2022, open and closed session, and the public forum on May 16th, 2022. 8.2 to acknowledge the FOIA request received by the district. 8.3, the acceptance of gifts and/or donations received in fiscal year 22. 8.4, to approve the Illinois High School Association membership renewal for 2022-2023 for both Oswego East and Oswego High School. And 8.5, to approve the following board policy references and legal updates. Section 3, 3:70, Section 4, Operational Services, 4:70, 4:180, Section 5, General Personnel, 5:40, 5:70, 5:110, 5:140, and Section 6, Instruction, 6:70, and 6:80.
Second.
Second. Oh.
Ms. Doyle? Aye. Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Ms. Simulton? Aye. Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Swanson?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Item 9.1 is information on financial statements. Does the board have any questions on what's been presented this evening? Item 9.2 is information on board policies for a first read. Does the board have any questions on the policies that have been presented this evening? Ellie, did you have a question there or no?
I don't know if I'm on a different version of this or not. No?
All right, item 9.3 is information on an intergovernmental agreement between Yorkville School District 115 and SD308. Are there any questions regarding this agreement?
I have some on this one, particularly as it relates to the extended school year programming. I'm just verifying we do have in place, like for example, this year we weren't able to offer our complete extended school year programming because we were low on staff, that we would not be required to participate in providing services to other districts at the expense of our own students, should this continue. Same with EVA, STARS, DHH.
That would be correct, right, Dr. Pesky?
Yeah, that's correct. In the contract that's presented, it specifically states that as room space and resources are available, we will allow student attendance.
Right, but for things like ESY, I wonder if we shouldn't be taking a look at this a little bit more in depth, because as room space allow might look one way in March in an entirely different way in May. And at what point do we then have to tell our own students, you know what, we don't have the staff we were hoping to get hired, so we've already made this commitment to other districts, so now we can't have it for our own students. So what specifically does this look like when we're doing an intergovernmental, not just at some random unspecified time, if space allows, but what can the expectation be for families in other towns as well? That is there a date by which we will make decisions on these things?
We do say by April 15th of each year. So that's something I can talk and have some more clear information about the process and how we make some of those determinations based on attendance that might happen after that April 15th time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Because I took this because the little X was by DHH. I thought that it was just the deaf and hard of hearing program that was coming, not all of the other ones. I thought that's what this contract was.
It is, however, we do offer this as skills, Eastview Academy, deaf and hard of hearing, STARS, programming, and extended school year are explicitly stated as options. And I know that we do utilize these for some other ones, I believe as well, as space allows, like we'd said. It seems like while DHH is the most common, that I don't think that that's the complete story.
Yeah, and on the first page of the contract, it lists those 4 programs, and we do have an X in there for the DHH program. But if there is interest in the others, then we can open that up and accommodate. I did, going back to 2018, we've had from Yorkville, we've had 7 kids in the program. In 2019, we've had 5 kids. In 2020, we had 3 kids. 2021, last year we had 5, or this year, we had 5 kids, and now next year we're expecting 3 kids. So
yeah, it's a pretty good program.
It's a smaller group of kids and something that I feel Dr. Hildebrand can keep us informed on.
Sounds good.
The only, I guess it's not really a question, but it's just something. When I start looking at insurance coverages, I know that this is likely to be industry standard to have the 1 million, 2 million, then 1 million, and then 3 million umbrella. but I'm just thinking that given everything is starting to become more expensive and liability, and of course litigious society, I just think that we should start at least considering, is this enough? And what would it cost us? It could be inconsequential to require just the next level up for the insurance.
Sometimes you have to prove why there's assets to protect that amount being raised.
And we meet quarterly with our insurance provider, and we get quarterly updates on where we stand with all of our claims and protections and things of that nature, and other districts, the potential for liability from other districts. So we review that 4 times a year.
Okay.
All right, item 9.4 is an informational presentation regarding a kindergarten orientation pilot program that we'd like to try this year, for next school year, I should say. Associate Superintendent Faith Dahlquist is here to present to the board.
Yes, we have a new orientation pilot that we are going to try at Boulder Hill and at Lakewood Creek. And just a kind of a reminder on how we currently screen our kindergartners. From May to August, we have staff available and parents bring in their students to be assessed on academic and SEL skills. And then we balance, so we have heterogeneous classrooms. And that takes quite a bit of staff time, but it also doesn't give us great data. If you think about assessing a kindergartner in May around their academics, that's kind of like buying them a pair of long pants in May and assuming and knowing that it will fit by September. And they have cognitive and physical growth spurts like crazy when they're this age. So sometimes that data isn't really useful by the time school is in session. So what we're really looking at for those 2 schools is not having the students assessed over the summer, having them in all of the kindergarten classes, and having a very unified, how do we do kindergarten at this school? What does that look like? Being in with many different classrooms and teachers, and then having a team there, the reading teacher, the instructional coaches, and the teachers doing the assessments and observations there within the first few days, and then making those really balanced class lists so that there is assurance of resources and trying to do what we've always tried to do over the summer, but in a much more timely and efficient manner. And so this just talks about what soft placement is, that they'll all come to kindergarten, they'll all be doing things to learn about the school, learning about routines, learning about behavioral expectations, but then we will place them in classes after we've had some more chances to give them orientation and some exposure to school. So the expected outcomes of this pilot is we want to have more balanced classes to better meet the needs of students. We want to have more equity in the screening process because not all parents bring their students in over the summer, or some of our students register so late in the year that there isn't time to do that. And then we really want to have all of our teachers, you heard the students talk about it tonight, the need to have teachers at a course all working together. This allows some of that, and this also will save a lot of staff time and stress as well. When we went through and talked about this, and I do need to really give the teams at the schools the accolades, they came with this idea of how best do we do this, and this came from kindergarten teachers and principals. But when looking through our own Envision 308, it aligns with so much of what we are trying to do to reduce time on assessments, to have equity, to increase differentiation for literacy and math. So we are excited about this. We're going to have to do a lot of communicating to the parents of these incoming kindergartners as they come in. And then what we plan to do is get teacher and principal interviews, talk to some parents as well, and then make a decision next year on whether we need to change the pilot, end the pilot, or move forward with more schools.
So, yeah, let me just understand the mechanics.
Sure.
So, first day of school, the kids, they all come in.
Mm-hmm.
They're in classroom settings, and differing functions are evaluating them.
So there'll be teams of people that would pull students out in small groups or individually to do assessments while the teachers are reading books to the class while the teachers are teaching about behavioral, while they're doing all of those pieces. So students will still go in to different classrooms, but the groups are going to be changing throughout the day, and all kids would have experiences with all the kindergarten teachers.
Okay. So it seems like the kindergarten teachers themselves will be able to provide the most input because they'll be seeing them in their more comfortable environment. I understand that you don't get the best information, and one of the things that I've heard over and over again is, my child was assessed. They didn't say anything or do anything because they were in a weird environment. So I like it for that. It's probably better data. But do we have enough staff to do that for all of our schools?
Sure.
And within like a day or two of first day of school?
So a kindergarten assessment to know some really basics about letter sounds and about counting doesn't take a huge amount of time to look at those basic skills. And every single one of our elementary schools has an instructional coach, has at least one reading teacher, sometimes more, sometimes an interventionist. And then that first week of school, you usually don't pull out for speech services for some of those other pieces, and you have a lot more hands on deck to be able to go in and do some of these assessments.
So that's about 80 to 100 kids per school, right? Something like that? Or?
It varies greatly from
I know
school
some
to school.
schools are much smaller.
Right.
But,
Well, the two schools you're looking at, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Maybe a little
Yeah,
more
and
in
if-
Oakwood
yeah.
Creek. I don't know.
And if these are building level experts and teacher experts,
Sure.
then I can see it being
those
more
teachers
possible.
are usually getting in and doing all their own new assessments anyway when they come in to do those same pieces. So now we'll really minimize that amount of time and give support to those teachers.
Well, but here's my question, and this, Dominic, you hit on it. How do we have enough staff when the expected outcome is a reduction in staff time and stress? But I'm looking up above, and our current staff hours the cost is $8,000 in staff hours of 810 hours for OWL screenings. That's 810 hours. Who does the assessments now, and where will those people be?
So those are staff members that we pay to come in during the summer to sit with students while their parents bring them in to do these assessments.
The same kindergarten teachers that'll be in the classrooms?
Sometimes it's kindergarten teachers, sometimes it's other teachers or reading specialists that are brought in to do those assessments.
So when we talk about adding this piece, and I know that teachers often will do their own assessments if something doesn't seem quite right in what they're seeing based on what the current assessment they were given is. I guess I wonder how this reduces the stress when all of a sudden, and I hate to say this after we've just had this lovely equity presentation, but 10 days in and teachers are now saying, yeah, I don't want that one. That kid. I don't want that kid. He's got a lot of behavior problems. She's got a lot of behavior problems. How do we look at this as reducing stress and how does this selection process work with this balancing?
Right. So that's
Well-
my question, right? So
We
if we're
tend to
assessing
track
all
here.
these kids, are we then splitting the high need kids amongst 3 teachers, or are you taking all the higher need kids and putting them in one
No,
class?
we're not creating a high class, a middle class, and a lower class.
So
It's
how
that's
does
our
this-
current trend.
So how does this help? Then what's the difference between this and differentiation? Now you know where they're at to start, because within a week, most of the teachers probably know where each of those kids are. So like my bigger concern for me is here I've got a kindergartner who's afraid to go to school.
Yes.
And now wait a minute, I don't have one teacher, I have 3, but I might get this one, but I really like this one, but that's not the one I got. So I feel like it's going to create a lot of anxiety with kids and parents. I mean, I'm willing to try it, but I think it's
That is
going
true.
to create a lot of anxiety.
I think it's a lot of how you sell it. If you've joined the kindergarten team here, it's definitely different from how, I went to kindergarten where you went outside the door and you saw who your teacher was, and you were either excited or you didn't know, or you were like, oh, I've heard, and.
But you have one face and one person that is kind of your comfort person. And it is hard at the kindergarten level. And I know it doesn't have to be, and for some kids it's not, but for the kids that are the most likely to need that kind of security of that one person, I really get concerned that will skew results also, that will create an unintended problem. And so I wonder just how that will be addressed.
Well, yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
So you're asking how will we avoid that they really liked this teacher but they didn't get?
No. I'm asking, you've got a high anxiety kid that comes into class and needs to know, who do I ask for things? And the answer is 5 people, you haven't met 4 of them yet, but this is the one for now, and then in about half an hour, we're gonna switch it. So how does this look for that student? And that's not a small number when it comes to, elementary and kindergartners, especially right now when many, many, many more haven't had the luxury of preschool education.
And even within our regular, kindergarten program, you have many teachers that are coming in and out of the classroom or taking them for music, for art, for reading teacher, for student teacher. We even have kindergarten classrooms already that switch students within that. And I want to emphasize that this idea and how we do this came from our teachers and a principal on a better way to do things, that they're talking about how this will balance classes and be better service to students. One of the things that happens as you try to balance and you have classes in, and then 7 or 8 students move out, and then all the move-in students go to
one classroom,
a new class.
Yeah.
And in general, not always for sure, but the students that are last in are sometimes our neediest students, and you get a very unbalanced classroom.
Well, and that was actually my follow-up on this, is that I do know, especially at the schools that have been selected for this pilot, and my suspicion is that's part of the reason they were selected, because there are a lot of first day of school drop-offs with absolutely nothing to say that they were going to come to class that day, and sometimes it can, be dozens, especially at that kindergarten level. So how will that be happening? Now you've taken in the first week or 2 of school students and very carefully balanced. What will happen for everybody else who comes in after that first week?
So, and I just want to back up to one thing that you said, that we selected. We didn't select schools to do this. They came to us and said,
that's
hey,
good to know.
We want to try this.
Okay.
How do we make this work? And
okay.
In fact, Lakewood Creek came a couple of months ago, and then Toya came a little bit later from Boulder Hill. I was like, have you 2 talked? And they hadn't even talked yet about, there are other districts and places that are doing this that they're excited about. When you asked about, what happens, on the 5th day after we already have classes made, then you would have balanced classes, and you're going to assess that student, which we sometimes do when they're coming in, and seeing, where they go. Now, one student coming in isn't going to unbalance a class, but as you're having frequent move-ins.
And we do. I believe this year in the fall, we'd had, I know for sure at one of these schools, we routinely have throughout the fall move-ins. I'm assuming at both, but I know the one.
Absolutely.
So it's a challenge today.
It's a challenge today, and what I just heard was, well, this ends up being some of our neediest students that are placed in just a classroom. So if we're doing assessments now, I guess my point being, I would be very hesitant, even though I totally get behind the concept, and I actually think this is a pretty cool thing to be able to give our families. There are some very specific things that I want to make sure are protected for our students' sakes, that they're not then just, well, we already did the assessments and balanced them, so we're just going to keep doing the same thing we were doing before with the next set. of kids that move in.
So, just to clarify, did you just say, Faith, that the teachers and administrators that brought this to you, they saw this happening in another district?
Yep.
So
They
is
saw
it-
semblance of this and said, how can we do this? This is a current problem for our incoming kindergarten.
So is it possible to also talk to them about all of the questions that we are bringing up now in order to get some real live solutions on what they're doing, and then perhaps we can
Well, more
adjust
than
it
that,
in
I
the-
would like us to have a solution for how we will do it here.
No, that's what I'm saying. If we find out from them how they're doing it, then we can determine if that's a best practice that we would like to adopt, or if there's a way that we would like to amend it before we implement it.
So what's the downside to our students with this choice? Because there's always a plus and a minus, even if the minus is not going to be that big a minus, there's always a downside. So what's the downside to our students of switching to this?
I think there will be an adjustment of, not knowing when you come in the door who is my teacher. It'll have to be we're doing orientation, and your first day with your assigned teacher is after some more orientation time, and what that looks like to do that. But that will be an adjustment for students. We anticipate that some of our students, perhaps that are in special education and have IEPs, that knowing that you have that structure and that piece and that need already going in, we may say, we already know that you have anxiety, you have this piece, you're in this classroom already.
How will you know that?
Well, for some of our students, they're already here for Brokaw and with early learning, and we know some of that about our students already. Or if parents come in with, if they're coming in with an IEP from a different district, from another early learning center, we would have that. But sometimes we don't know.
And as you just said, that's the don't knows that tend, in your experience, I think you'd said, to be some of the needier students for services and making sure that they get to have the benefits of the balanced classroom. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what else, anything else? What does this do to staff uncertainty? I know staff do love to get everything lined up ahead of time. I often see number lines and things with students' names on their desks. That's a pretty traditional back-to-school experience for a teacher.
One of the things that the kindergarten teams have been talking about is having said number lines or name tags and things on desks to welcome people, but everybody has the exact same one. And then when you move classrooms and move those around, those move with you, or those pieces. You're still going to have welcoming things with kids' names on them as they come in, but class won't start, like with your class roster and all of those pieces, until we've had some orientation days.
So the teachers at this grade level in both of the pilot schools have requested this. Their building principals also support the teachers in their request to provide this as a better opportunity to try for their students. And they're aware of those things that would need to be different already,
Right.
like right now, today.
Yes.
Okay.
And they came to us with this.
The principals
So
or
the
the
principals
principals
or
and the
the
teachers?
teachers?
So the teachers through the principals. I don't know which chicken and egg, but they'd had lots of conversations and then sought our approval to do this.
To Eugene's point, I would feel better if I knew another district who did it, and if we had some more, I appreciate a concept of what we would like to happen, but I think the practical nature of actually getting it done is.
So I actually, I've done this in another district, kindergarten readiness camp, and it's typically done prior to the start of school, and it's a 2-week period of time where the students come to and run through a normal day of kindergarten. The teachers are allowed to assess. It includes the specials teachers. My biggest concern is that why we're doing this at the start of school. In essence, I appreciate the kind of guided observations, and I think teachers, they'll make better decisions in class placement with this. My concern is starting it on the first day of school instead of that time being used to develop norms and or to explain norms and classroom management. especially when we don't have preschool for all students. You know, everybody's coming in at a different place. So I'm very concerned about that. I think it could possibly set back our students. So that's something that I would like to see addressed. I hope we're not doing this because of the 110 hours during the summer, because this is such a critical time for assessing math and reading for students. And I mean, I remember taking my kid in to sit down and had a reading assessment with someone and so forth. Also, right fit makes me very cringy. I don't understand that, I guess. Maybe if it means meeting students where they're at, I can understand that. But who's the right fit for, the student or the teacher, I guess, or both? I don't know. I just feel like the start of school is not the time for this. Maybe, you know, in August, early August or end of July, which wouldn't make it really work this year, but I just don't understand why we would do that at the start of school.
Can we, when you find out all those questions, can you send it out to the whole board just so we kind of?
Sure, and I mean, there will still be a lot on classroom management and
Right.
norms, but this is
Right.
Boulder Hill kindergarten, and this is how we do Boulder Hill, walk down the hallways and bathrooms and all of those.
But it's
pieces.
with a specific teacher, and then 2 weeks later, we're gonna say, no, Mrs. Smith isn't your teacher, it's actually Mr.
Isn't it like 2 days?
Yeah, it's only 4 days, but.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a huge amount of time.
And that
It would be
student-
great if we could extend the school year, but one of the issues as we, talk about whether to do that in August is getting all students in to have that experience.
Because you're
Well,
not going to have a
it's
lot
never
of
gonna
them
be
until
100% because
day
it's not
one.
during assessing them now anyway.
Yeah, and I think I have less concern about that because if ever there were people that protected their academic minutes, it is kindergarten teachers because they want every minute they can to pump the brains full. So this wouldn't be brought up. I trust that if there wasn't a need. My concern is that it's June, and I presume that this had already been determined that this is just what's going to happen this year for these kindergartners. So there haven't been plans made to do it in any other way. So really, this is truly informational and not anything that we should be weighing in on. Is that, I mean, am I understanding the purpose of the information item correctly?
Yes, we've already communicated, some of these things and have this in pilot. This was informational. This is a pilot that we're doing.
See, I think this sounds like an improvement, at the very least, of our current practices. And I think what I've heard about right fit is it's sometimes, and maybe Faith can help me, because I probably am not going to explain it very well, but it's when one teacher ends up with a bunch of kids that are hard, and then the rest of the kids, so there's not equity in that classroom, so the rest of the kids suffer and aren't getting, the proper instruction and help from the teacher. You probably could say it more relevant.
It's about, for the other grade levels, in elementary school, teachers are good at assessing students, seeing what groups of students mix well together, and creating those classes. Kindergarten, we're not so great at it because we haven't seen the students yet.
Well, but to that point, though, I do know, though, that creating those right fits in classes as you get to know the students often can lend itself to, kind of putting kids into specific tracks where they end up in the same classrooms with the same students year after year. That might not be the right fit for that student, but that's just, the right fit, so to speak. So I'm concerned with where we are as we're looking at, we're making slow progress with some of our professional development, that we are not placing more on our students and more on our staff than we can reliably tell the parents that we can provide for real. I really want to see these be a right fit, if even in a pilot, for these specific kids in these specific schools, this is their only kindergarten year, even though we can have a lot of different years of pilots. So what will we do if this doesn't work for these kids this year so they don't miss out on an educational experience in kindergarten?
So we're only talking about changing, taking those first few days
Yep.
to then assign
Totally heard ya.
classes. So,
Yep.
And I would say it's stronger than a hope. Our efforts to do this are that we create classroom lists that are even be better at providing inclusive classrooms that can have success and challenge for all. So it's really just those 4 days of orientation that we're giving up. It'll still be the same teachers providing quality kindergarten instruction that it's always been. We're just providing more orientation to that group to get them started. So when you say they'd miss out on their year of kindergarten.
Well, if they're not put in a right fit classroom after those 4 days.
Well, but we're going to do this to get better than providing the right fit.
Yeah.
Ideally, absolutely. I'm asking for, because it's important to understand what all the unintended consequences can be. What I'm asking is, do we have a plan for these students should unintended consequences arise that mean that come November, what you thought was great in August, because you put all this extra in, actually isn't as good as missing out on those first 4 days of creating the relationship. One of the things that we also push very, very hard, Dr. Sparlin talks about it every year, is that significant 72 hours, that first 72 hours to create trust. And that's what I wonder, after this first 4 days of assessment, norms, evaluation, what will be the strategy in place for then the assigned teacher to create that so that those students don't miss on what we have said is a really important time in order to get buy-in from students to learn.
So the significant 72 can be delivered by one teacher, can be delivered by a team of teachers. Yes, when they start their classes, there will probably be even some more team building, get to know you types of things, but this is a team of now, how do we do kindergarten at this school instead of one teacher?
So they'll all continue to work with the students more commonly throughout the rest of the year too?
Somewhat.
Okay.
I like it because it builds more opportunity for students to gain these places of trust,
It can, absolutely. I like that too. It's the difference between the it can and will it here right now that I'm curious about.
I think the main thing the reason why I like it, and from what I heard from the core, was that there's an assessment that's happening during the summer, and then there's a reassessment that still happens, happens in the fall. And so when the assessment happens in the summer and the kids are placed, when we talk about right fit for the kid, there's still a reassessment that has to take place in the fall to determine if, where that kid is or where they progressed during the summer or not. And I think that doing the assessment in the fall gives us a true picture of where the kid is at that time, as opposed to doing it twice and then potentially have to change the class or make an adjustment based on the adjustment for the fall versus what we adjusted for in the summer. And if I'm hearing correctly, that's the primary reason why they are
Totally
recommending.
great goal. I hear the same thing, Eugene, and I think that this is probably a good plan, but I do need to ask the questions because this isn't necessarily a slam dunk.
I'm not speaking to you. I'm just speaking from my perspective of
Yeah,
why
no, I
believe
hear
this
you,
is good.
and I've heard that this is a good idea, and a lot of people like it. I don't know that I'm sold on it, but I also don't know that this matters because I don't think that this is necessarily a decision we are being asked to make. In which case, where are we at on that kind of thing?
Can I ask one more science-y type question?
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about some of the reading specialists and some of the other people in the building who were going to be assessing these kids. So a concern for me is how one person would assess may not necessarily be the same way that another person would assess. So how are we,
It exists today, yeah.
how are we,
In a rate of reliability, is that what you're
yeah.
looking for? Okay.
I'm trying to say it nicely.
Right, so,
Yeah.
sure, on testing protocols, for example, of, do you know your letters or not? There are, how much assist you can give, but the protocols aren't somebody's handwriting or somebody there.
Right, but sometimes it's in delivery.
Sure, and there can always be a little bit of that, even with, and our teachers are great and they try hard not to do that, but even with teachers on how much of an assist they might give even within the same 25
Right.
students within their class. So there's always a little bit of that, but these are people that will be, assessing and have been doing the assessment even in the summertime with those same concerns, but now even outside of their school. The person that might be assessing them wouldn't even be at their school.
I don't want to belabor the point. I'm up in the air about it, but
I'd just like to see some answers to some of my concerns and see how we will be addressing them here. And what steps will we be taking to train our teachers to be able to successfully evaluate them in the first week of school?
Faith, on the expected outcomes, for each of those points, how are you going to assess if a class was more balanced, how the screening process provided more equity, how it promoted more team efficacy, and how it saved staff time and reduced stress? How are you going to, what are the factors that are going to prove those?
Well, right now, we don't have all of our students that are in part of the screening process. So by waiting until school starts, we already will know that all of the students that are there, as Lori pointed out, there still may be some students that move in, but every year, we don't have all parents that are able or equipped to bring their students in, so they miss out on that possibility. So that's part of that equity piece. And then also having it given by staff at that school as part of that process at the same time of the year. If you can imagine a student that's assessed in May and a student that's assessed in August, and we use the data the same way, they sometimes have huge cognitive growth spurts that whole time delay doesn't account for. So I can already speak to the equity piece. With more balanced classes, the kindergarten teachers have worked with their principals of, here's what classes look like, and they assess their kids at the very beginning of the school year, and sometimes there's already half of a class that is well below grade level and really stands out for whatever reason that they were much lower. We'll know then, comparing this year to last year, whether they're more balanced after our 4-day assessment, because we already have the information to show year after year that sometimes we don't do very well because we based it on data that was that old since May. With the team efficacy within kindergarten teachers, that we're going to have to interview them and talk about how well do you feel like you're matching and moving at those pieces, and then we're going to have to talk to them about staff time and stress that was involved. But since this is coming from them,
I guess I just think putting those up there is, I don't know, it's going to be interesting. What happens if this doesn't work? Then where do these?
Then we don't.
Right, but where do these kids stand then?
That's what I was asking.
How are we going to?
I guess when you're saying it doesn't work, you're saying that there were students that were really stressed out during the first 3 or 4 days.
Or the classes weren't balanced, so they didn't,
And they're already not, haven't been balanced. So it would be like repeating, like if we don't do a good job of balancing out because of this, then we'll be right back where we are.
So, except for the fact that now, in the first 4 days of school, the reading specialists and other staff that usually are used between all of the grade levels have now been specifically taken up by the kindergarten students, so it can have potentially some impacts on students at the other grade levels as well. I'm concerned about where all of a sudden this 810 extra hours is going to come from. Because if it takes 810 extra hours to do this, yes, some of them might get reassessed, but those 810 hours don't go away. That still needs to be extra. So who will provide those extra hours, and where do they come from? There's a few different things I'd like to see some more answers on. But to be perfectly frank, if we're being asked to look at this in June for something that's already been decided to be implemented in about 2 months, I'm a little concerned about that whole concept also. That is this an information item, or is this a decision that had been made previous and now we're just being informed of it?
It's being informed that we're doing this pilot. We didn't
Okay.
want you to know. We didn't
Thanks.
want you not to know.
Then I will let you use your hours to prepare to succeed at your pilot rather than to answer my questions. I will reserve judgment until I hear what happens in the fall, I guess.
All right. Thank you for the conversation. Great conversation. Item 9.5 is information and discussion item in regards to the Prescott Mills subdivision and students parking there. As you all know, we've had the Homeowners Association who have spoken to the board in public comment on a couple of different occasions. In November of the school year, Mrs. Johnson and I attended a meeting of the Homeowners Association in regards to the issues that they're dealing with students parking in DeVoe Drive in their neighborhood. And on May 11th, Mrs. Simulton, Mrs. Johnson, and I attended a meeting at Village Hall that was attended by the village administrator, village president, chief of police, a village trustee, and the presidents of the 3 homeowners associations for Prescott Mills. We each took our turn addressing the issue. The village talked about what they've done. I shared what we've done as a school district regarding this issue. As a school district, I shared that we've made announcements at the school about parking in Prescott Mills and being respectful, following the speed limit and parking signs. We've had engineers look at the feasibility of adding parking to OE and asked the architects to include any possible additional parking spaces into our comprehensive facilities plan. Something that I found out after the meeting on May 11th at Village Hall, and I believed it to be true, but I wasn't sure, so I had checked into this, I looked into the question if we've added additional spaces at OEHS since the school opened 16 years ago, and the answer is yes. We have added approximately 500 spots during that time as the population here at OE has grown. One of the questions that Mrs. Bankowski and I addressed at the May 11th meeting with the homeowners was if adding the additional spaces would fully address the issue. And I shared that I believe it could help, but that we could not guarantee to the homeowners that by adding additional spots would solve the problem. This is due to the fact that by adding additional spots, we still have more students that are 16 and have driver's license than the number of spots that we could add to our property. And so this is where we are currently at. As a school district, I've done what I've said we would do. We've made announcements at the school. We've had engineers look at our property. We've, to see if we could add additional spaces. That project has been added to the comprehensive facility list of projects. It's important to note that we currently don't have the full funding to complete. And so with that said, I wanted to open this up to the board to have a conversation. Ultimately, I would like the board to provide me and the administration any direction on any next steps regarding this issue, because this is something that three of us have attended meetings at, and the homeowners have presented to us on a couple different occasions. So I open it up to the board.
Have we asked the village if they could put up no parking signs from 8 to 2 or whatever it is?
Yeah, we did. That did come up. That was not only brought up by us, but it was also brought up by the Homeowners Association. I think at one time, I believe there was parking on both the east side and west side of DeVoe, and right now the parking is only on the east side, but there's no limitation Monday through Friday or during any times. So when our students are parking over there, they're legally parking for the most part, and those students who aren't legally parking have received tickets. So.
I fail to see where, with a declining enrollment, this is going to continue to look the way it looks right now, and a several $1 million investment for a short-term, maybe sort of kind of solution feels way more expensive than throwing up a few no parking between 8 and 2 signs. This has been a problem for all towns that have high schools since cars came in and high schools began paying for letting students pay for parking spots. It is not a new problem. It is not something that only Oswego works with. And in our own community, it's not limited to student parking. We have similar issues with parent pickup lines and things in some schools also. All of these, are incidental things that can happen, but if these were to happen because, say, a business got very successful or a restaurant got very successful, and so all of a sudden a lot of people wanted to park, you might put up a parking garage if it benefited the entire town to do that, right? However, if it would just benefit one business for a year, you might not choose to do that. You might instead throw up something temporarily or have something else that would be far less costly to the community as a whole than to put in a permanent structure that's not going to be able to fix it anyway. I'm very concerned that we would contemplate even the cost of having a parking lot built. And I know that did cost money to have our architects complete that study as well. I'm a little concerned about all that. So I'm not interested in entertaining anyone's time with this further, since we do know that our enrollment is going to be declining and that this is likely not going to stop it as much as a great big super sticky sticker on the window and then some good enforcement would do.
Yeah, at the meeting, I did talk about the declining enrollment, and it just so happens that meeting was right after we had the the 5-year projections by RSP, so I did speak to that. And the homeowners did give examples of other school of other areas, high schools that have neighborhoods around that they have, that those neighborhoods have that limited parking that you're referring to. They did give some other examples to the village, to the village and the others that were in attendance.
That seems to be how most areas tend to handle it, rather than asking the school to build additional structures.
Well, I appreciate the fact that we have been good citizens and have added 500 additional parking spaces over and above what the ordinance requires.
Yeah, that was mentioned that the number of spaces we have at this lot exceeds what the current ordinance is. They did talk about it. It's a very old ordinance from, I believe it was 1970.
1975.
Yeah, in the 1970s. But even if the ordinance was changed, that we would be, that you'd be grandfathered in because this is already an existing facility.
And students aren't required to drive themselves to school to get here, that we do provide buses. I'm assuming there have been transportation safety studies done on what would be considered acceptable for walking and safety for students to walk if they're not able to do that. I'm not entirely certain that it would be entirely safe crossing that area to get into here without a bus.
Well, and honestly, I brought the question up, like, I would have assumed that in the spirit of what we were all there for, safety would have been the #1 concern. And the onus was placed on the school district to fix this. And I did not feel that, and this is just
Yeah,
my
I don't think we
opinion.
can.
I did what?
I don't think we can fix this. Like, really, I don't think that there is anything a school district can do that will fix it.
Correct.
As long as there is one more student with a birthday.
Well, and like Mrs. Bankowski said, we're aging, the students are not. We are always going to have this issue.
Yes.
And those students walking from Prescott Mill, as soon as those 80, if we were to build 80 spaces, we're going to
Yes.
have the next 80 students.
Yes.
What does help this is banning parking on those streets, because
Yes.
then we don't have the safety issues of the students going.
So what's
Mr.
the
Martyr
downside?
suggested that we annex another piece of property and build an even bigger structure.
Really?
Yes. And have we looked into that?
We have that third high school lot down at Run 26. Maybe we could stop renting that out, build a parking lot, and bus them from there. That'd be great. That's not a realistic solution.
Well, that was what was frustrating, is that we really needed everybody to kind of do their part. We really have done and provided more spaces than we're required to, but also without being forced to. We already did it.
No,
And that's relative to other high schools too. I think that we have a lot of parking compared to lots of different high schools.
Correct.
And, and a
we
lot of
still
what
have
you
a
said,
waiting
Lori,
list.
was spot on. So.
This just doesn't
And
make
we still have a
sense
waiting
for
list.
it to be something that in a community where we value intergovernmental relationships and we've all benefited from working with each other. This one specific thing really makes no sense to me. Why we wouldn't continue strong intergovernmental cooperation to provide an easy fix. This has been an issue since that subdivision was built. That subdivision was built because it was approved by our village to be built there, knowing that there was a high school across the street from it. And we have to understand that this is not, just like you wouldn't charge the one owner of that store for that parking garage. I mean, like, this is a community, and we can't do it. We don't have that kind of authority to handle private roads and to handle situations on them. And I wouldn't ask any staff member to step off school property to begin to do that in a village area.
We were also asked if,
appalling.
what can we do to, I don't remember the word, I'm gonna use the word like deter students. Can we take away extracurricular activities, or can we take away other stuff? And Dr. Sparlin was like, absolutely not.
No.
And,
They're parking legally on a street.
On a public street.
On a public street. They're
If
not
they're not, they
doing
should get
anything
ticketed.
illegal. Like, this is, no. We're not, no.
And
We
I
want
do
to
believe-
encourage our students to participate.
Where was the village at when they asked?
Mr. Barter was the only village representative there?
No, Mr. DeSantos and the village, Troy was there, and
I mean, I guess,
and
what was their answer
the
to?
chief
What,
was
what,
there.
what did anyone else have to say about this?
That they had done what they were willing to do.
Okay,
Which
so
was
they were done what they were
ordinance-
willing to do, but not what they could do.
Well, that they had ordinance the one side of the street not to be parked on, but that they felt like this was a public, a public space, place, and that they weren't comfortable doing that for the 7
And warned
to
us that
3
when-
p.m.
that they went to check the ordinance and that it was so old that they will be updating it very soon.
What ordinance? The ordinance about how many parking spaces?
Per enrollment, yeah.
For the third, if
Oh, I
and
see.
when.
So,
If and
okay,
when.
I see where we're going with this. So, okay. Well, we do have this issue in other municipalities as well. I know in Montgomery, they've been very hesitant to do much of anything related to the roads to solve the issues with student safety, which has been a true concern at Lakewood Creek parent pickups.
Not just our student safety, but the people that live in Prescott Mill, cars
Well,
going through.
but this has
from-
happened, what I'm saying is this isn't just us. We do have this issue in some
Exactly.
of our other municipalities. It is a long-term thing. And frankly, it's just a matter of being good at working together with each other. This is not a good example of that. And that's real disappointing to hear. So I hope that we can have some more conversations about if we need to work with our community intergovernmental agencies in a bigger way. And it might just be that, you know what, it is an unfortunate thing that those homeowners made that choice to be part of when they chose to purchase there. But that's a shame to me that we can't do something better when it's not hard to do.
I do have faith that the chief was going back to look at permitting in that area. He did say that there's only so much he can send over his.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he's
That
like,
makes
I've
sense.
got the rest of, he goes, I've
You
got
have an
30,000
entire, yeah, you
cars
have
on
an entire.
34 every day,
yes.
yeah. So upping that isn't going to really
No,
help.
we just need some signs for
And I
school
think-
hours.
Exactly.
That's not, to me, that doesn't feel like much to ask to help out some of our community. Maybe it is, and I just don't understand all the pieces. And I'm willing to hear
Keep
that too,
everyone
but
safe.
in any event, I don't think that an unwillingness to put up some signs makes it justifiable to spend a few $1 million also of public funding in a school building area.
Well, my concern is that if we had that money available readily and easily, and we didn't have all these projects.
I mean, we don't though. We never would, because there will always be projects, and our focus isn't to mandate street parking. Our focus is to educate the children in our community.
That's my point,
So
though.
when would we ever choose to be willing to give up education in order to try to annex public roads? That's just where I would go with it, but what do I know?
And I do believe that Dr. Sparlin, first of all, you handled the meeting very well with all eyes on the school district. He really held our position, so I was very grateful for that. But I do think we still have a responsibility to make those announcements and to
Absolutely,
you know,
and those
ensure
are
that
very large font. You cannot miss them. You walk in the front door of the school during school hours. There is nothing else on the monitors other than that it is not allowed in Prescott Mills. The problem is, it actually is allowed in part of Prescott Mills. Like, it just is. It's a legal thing that any citizen can, or
a
not,
public road.
that anyone can park a car legally on these roads. So we can say all we want to, but we might not be telling the entire truth
No,
by
and I'm
saying
not saying
it.
that, but what we've seen kids like hopping in 6 kids into a trunk. Like, let's do our part and tell kids.
Oh,
that
for sure.
students,
Well,
that's not great. Let's not do that.
I mean, hopefully we do have the good sense not to remove all of the things that we currently put into place
Exactly.
to discourage it. But clearly, despite all of that, 6 kids in a trunk will happen with a $3 million garage or lot or whatever. It's going to happen if there is a legal space to park.
Right, and that's evident when we built 500 additional parking spaces. And
Well,
it's
that
still
is more than we did on the other side of town. We weren't able to provide enough extra parking for community parking at an elementary school because we don't have student drivers in a different municipality. And even there, we had found that there are challenges working with our village governments on helping each other out when it comes to providing these minimal efforts to help out our neighborhoods. That's a shame.
All right, anything else on that?
No, I found the policy though.
You found the policy?
Yeah.
Nice.
One parking space shall be provided for each employee, plus 10 spaces for each 100 pupils.
Okay.
So 280, and we have 1,000.
Yeah, 1,000.
We have
There's
over 1,000 parking spaces and we need about 280
Well, for the kids,
for the kids.
plus staff.
Plus staff.
So what,
Yeah.
400, so we have.
Thank you for that. That's good
Thank you,
information.
that was very helpful.
That's a shame. I mean, if we had all the money in the world and education was amazing and kids were 100% achieving in reading, math, and everything else, I would definitely consider this next. But I can't, like, that's not our jurisdiction.
Yeah, we have so many capital projects that
Yeah,
touch the students.
We really
you know.
do need to get heat first and roofs.
Okay.
Yep. So, just
Chillers and boilers.
Speaking of, look who's still
security
here.
cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, thank you, Dr. Sparlin. All right, 9.6, I make a motion to postpone discussion on the resolution for board member elections indefinitely. Can I get a second? Second?
Indefinitely? What?
Ms. Swanson,
No.
Ms. Simulton,
Yes.
Ms. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Cerrone,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood.
Call the question. So this could be brought up at another, if we're voting on it indefinitely, if there is a reason why we wanted to bring it up before, we could still bring it up.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, that's just
absolutely.
postponed, yeah.
Aye.
Yeah.
It's just postponed without a specific date
Got it.
to which
Aye.
it will be discussed.
All right. Motion passes 4-2. All right, 10.1, action item, approval of bills for payment. Can I have a motion, please?
Get my glasses on. I make a motion to authorize the payment of bills in the amount of $3,892,382.48 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Saron,
Yes.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Simulton.
Aye, motion passes 6-0. Action item 10.2, approval of cooling towers at the Wheatlands Elementary and Thompson Junior High School, and structural work on supports at Benarsic Junior High School. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve a contract with C. at Acatelli Heating for the base bid and the two alternates for $447,960 as presented.
Second.
But I have questions. And they stayed till 9:30. I feel like we should ask them something. I do have two. You want to come up? Just, I mean, you're here. So, one question I have is, this was for Thompson Junior High. So, how old are these cooling towers?
Thompson's going on 24. It was refurbished. I don't have that date. It was refurbished.
2009.
Thank you.
Ah, look at you.
And the Wheatlands, I believe, is at 20. It's as old as this school, so I'd have to go.
So are they, I know I asked this because I hate to, buy a new car if mine's still running. Are they still running?
We had the problem with the Wheatlands this summer where that tower crashed.
Okay.
It is running, end of life.
Well, so that brings up my second question.
Sure.
So we're replacing the tower at the Wheatlands, but we did not replace the tower at Boulder Hill.
That's next on my agenda. So you'll see that in the near future, the Boulder Hill
Like the
recommendation.
really super near future? Because I
Yes,
assume that since Boulder Hill went
Yes.
out first, we would have replaced that one first.
correct. And at Boulder Hill is the chiller, not the tower, but we definitely need to move on the tower at Boulder Hill next.
All right, and then my only other question is the totals with the alternates. There's a big difference in price once you get into the alternates. So I guess my question is, they can't, I don't know the word for it, they can't bill us more than the bid,
Correct.
correct? So
Not
even
a-
if they have to do more work, or the prices of, I know the prices
They'd
of all
have to
these
run
parts are going
a
up.
change order. If they ran into something unusual.
Well, so that's what it's called, a change order. So my
Correct, yeah.
concern is when you get a $200,000 difference, what's the change order gonna be?
It depends on the problem. I can't tell you, in my experience, there hasn't been a whole lot of, well, I've had no change orders where my towers are concerned. Those are pretty basic mechanical pieces of equipment. You don't run into a whole lot of surprises with cooling towers.
Getting them?
Well, delivery and supply
Right.
is a whole nother conversation.
But, so if the price changes because of not being able to get them, that would not come up as a change order, right?
I don't know that I can answer that, potentially.
So that's my only
Well,
concern. My concern is it's a $200,000 difference, and
Right.
usually when there's a difference in companies,
Right.
it's not that big.
Sure.
And that it probably would be more of a problem with the refurbished. With the acquisition, it's a matter of the company getting the parts, and if one company has problem getting those parts, the other companies could have problems, so it would be kind of,
And I think the issue isn't so much as getting them, it's getting them in a timely manner.
Yeah.
That's the big problem is timely delivery.
My only concern is on the change orders,
Sure.
that's all.
Yeah, I
I'm trying to read it fast again, but you just said refurbished. This is not refurbished.
No.
these are
No.
replaced.
No.
It would be
Change orders if it
harder
was-
if it would be harder, and the prices could fluctuate more if it was refurbished with the
Okay.
fact of change orders. But here we're looking at brand new equipment, getting it replaced.
Got
Should be
it.
a one and done.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, when you said refurbished, it made my stomach drop a little bit. So.
No.
No, these need to be replaced.
Like, wait a minute, wait.
Wait a second.
I was trying to see where they were coming from, what kind of chillers they were putting in.
The towers?
The tower.
Towers,
These
yeah.
are the towers.
I can't say. I don't have that information immediately available.
That's my only other concern is, are they putting in a tower that we're gonna have to go to Canada to get the parts for? Or are they putting in one that's,
I can get that information. I don't have it readily available. But duly noted for future reference as well, yeah, sure.
all right. Hey, thanks for staying so late.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you got your money's worth out of this? Or
Yeah,
your
do you-
hours worth, I should say?
Do you
Absolutely.
You feel,
We're
okay.
sorry.
his
This is still an
almost 3
educational.
hours.
This is professional development for
Yeah.
me. I'm learning so much just sitting here. Truly.
Good. Glad you don't feel like.
And Rob, I actually
Thank you.
believe you would sit through every board meeting just to learn more, because I know this about you. You do, yeah, you
Thank
probably
you
would.
so
anyway.
much.
Thank you.
If he doesn't, he listens to them.
I know it.
Yep.
All right, did we do that one? Okay.
Yeah, we just got to vote on it.
10 point, oh, we voted?
No, we got to
Okay,
vote on it.
right. Can I have a motion, please?
Oh, we already made the motion.
I said second. I seconded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10.2.
Oh, okay.
So we just got to vote.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Ms. Simulton?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Swanson?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. 10.3, approval of resolution and request of Kendall County Land Cash Funds. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve a resolution and request for the release of Kendall County Land Cash Funds to Oswego Community Unit School District Number 308 in the amount of $24,318.29.
Second.
Ms. Simulton?
Aye.
Ms. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Action item 10.4, potential action arising out of closed session. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to affirm Dr. Sparlin's April 21st, 2022 uniform grievance decision.
Second.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Ms. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Simulton?
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Action item 10.5, approval of district administrator contracts. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the district administrator contracts as presented.
Second.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Ms. Simulton?
Aye.
Ms. Swanson?
No.
Motion passes 5-1. Action item 10.6, approval of personnel report. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
Second.
Ms. Simulton?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Ms. Swanson?
Nope.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.